Hi everyone, welcome to this Diablo Immortal video. So in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the Necromancer essence called Corpse Splitter. And this is a weapon essence for the Bone Spirit skill. So let's take a look to see what it does. So basically, when Bone Spirit damages the same target 3 times within 2 seconds, it silences them, preventing the use of skills for 2.9 seconds. Cannot silence the same target more often than once every 6 seconds. And if you have this in an awakened slot, you get an additional 10% damage increase for Bone Spirits. So it sounds pretty interesting, and as you can see straight away, it sounds like a very PvP essence, which it is. So let's just take a look to see what it's like. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at the skills tab, just in case it added any extra information which wasn't included in the initial text. So this is Bone Spirits here, and here it is. When Bone Spirits damages the same target 3 times within 2 seconds, it silences them, preventing the use of skills for 2.9 seconds. Cannot silence the same target more often than once every 6 seconds. Okay, so exactly the same text. There's no hidden damage or any other information that they've included here. So it's mostly an essence which helps towards any other Bone Spirit essences that you have that might do damage. As well as doing damage, you're also going to get to silence those enemies. So yeah, a PvP essence. You wouldn't really go and equip this one and use it in PvE. You wouldn't really want to silence enemies in PvE. That'd be quite pointless. This is mainly one that you want to take into Battleground and any wars that you have. Vault would be a good one as well, and just try and silence your enemies. Okay, let's take a look to see what it looks like. So here I've got Wandering Wraith, and if we have a look at the training dummy, you can see it says silence there, unable to cast skills. There's a nice little logo of someone doing like a shush with their finger. We'll have a look at it again. Right at the top there, you can see 3, 2, 1, and it's gone away. So you can see at the training dummy, it definitely silences your opponent. There we go, you've got the symbol there again. I quite like that actually. I haven't really paid attention to the silencing symbol. It's quite a nice design. So it definitely silences them. And there's not really that much else you can get out of this essence in terms of looking at the training dummy damage or anything like that, because it's not really damage we're after for this essence. It's kind of like supporting us by doing that silence to your enemy. Now obviously if we have a look at the text, it does say it has to damage the target 3 times within 2 seconds. So some Bone Spirit skills which are just like one burst, and that's not going to work with this, because you know you're only going to attack the enemy once. You want like a continuous damage one. Okay, so as you saw there, the Bone Spirit essence which I am using to do the damage is Wandering Wraith. It's one of my favourite ones to use in PvP, just because you can stand back and sort of cast the Wraiths. And you know what I do like about this is that it's going to do that damage, and whilst I'm attacking here, it's also going to be silencing the enemy, which is really cool. So it just means that they don't get to deal that many skills on me if they are silenced, and I can just get a few more hits in, just have a bit of an advantage. Now if we were to remove that essence and put on any other random Bone Spirit essence, or maybe just not anything at all, so let's just get rid of any Bone Spirit essence there. If we were to use just a default one, that would be this one here. Obviously that's fast enough, so that's going to silence the enemy, because you are going to be able to deal enough damage within that 3 seconds. So the shield slot has loads of different Bone Spirit essences which you can pick from, that you can take into battle with you, that pair nicely with Corpse Splitter, which is on your weapon. Let's take a look at some of these Bone Spirit essences to see which ones you'd probably want to pair with Corpse Splitter and which ones you don't really want to pair against them. So first of all, we've got Death's Egress. I've done a video on this one. It's quite an interesting essence, but one which you want to use in PvE instead of PvP, just because you got to get really close to make most out of this one. If you're further away, you're not going to be able to do much, because you first of all need an enemy to actually cast this against. So you need to be close enough to trigger this, and there we go. When it does trigger, this does trigger the silence as well from Corpse Splitter, so you can see the silence. So Death's Egress does trigger the silence from Corpse Splitter, but it's not one which you'd want to pair, because this means you have to get really close in PvP, and you're probably going to be quite squishy and die, unless you're not sort of cased in a golem or something like that. But yeah, you don't really want to be using this one with Corpse Splitter, just because of how close you want to get. But it's good to know that the Bone Spirit that circles you does hit the enemy enough times to actually trigger the silence, so that's quite nice. So it's good to know that this skill does trigger the silence, but it's not one which I'd want to pair with Corpse Splitter, so let's ignore that one. The other one, I want to have a look at this separately actually, properly, but I might just have a quick look now. It's called Kepi Leki's Tribute. So it's where Bone Spirit now conjures a fog filled with wraiths to attack enemies in a targeted location. So let's have a look at this one. This is a very PvP oriented Bone Spirit skill as well. Let's see if it actually, oh wow, damn, that looks good. That's literally the first time I've seen that skill, and it attacked the training dummy so much that it definitely did the 3 attacks within 2 seconds. You can see this silenced the enemy and did a load of other attacks as well. What else do we have? Let's go down. We've got lots of Soulfire ones, Mages one. We've got Drifter Sphere, which we just looked at. That definitely pairs together with Corpse Splitter. And if we keep going down, we've got Soul Leave. This is where Bone Spirit now instantly unleashes many spirits, but no longer consumes energy to maintain the effect. So if we stay back and use this one, you get one sort of burst there. And again. And that was enough to cast the silence. But this one's okay. I mean, you know, you've got to just make sure you time this properly. When someone's sort of running at you, use it. And it's just that one burst. Unless you wait until the cooldown goes twice. You can see on the right hand side, I can use it once. And you've got to wait quite a long time until you can use it a second time. There we go. And then you just sort of do these 2 bursts. So it doesn't really do too much, but it's good to know that this one does trigger the silence as well. So they pair together nicely. And let's see what else we have. That was called Downpour. That's Soul Leave. We have Untapped Marrow. And then we have Guard of the Loom. So Untapped Marrow is where Bone Spirits now unleashes several spirits in all directions, dealing damage to enemies along the path. This is like a one-time burst one. So for example, if you're here and use it, just burst. The thing I don't like about this one is you can easily miss your opponent. You've got to time this really well. So you could be running around, someone's chasing you, you see them, you attack and you miss them, and then try again. You just got to try 1 or 2 times until you actually hit your enemy. Let's see if this actually triggers the silence though. See, that one didn't because it was only 1-time attack. Let's see what happens when we have 2 of them. Here we go, 1, 2. That didn't trigger the silence. Now if we have a look again, let's wait until we get all 3 charges up and see if that triggers the silence. So you can see this is going to be a definite no-no. You don't want to pair this with Corpse Splitter. 1, 2, 3. There. You need all 3 charges to hit the enemy to actually trigger the silence with Corpse Splitter. So yeah, I wouldn't really use this one at all. So Untapped Marrow, that's definitely no. Do not pair Untapped Marrow, which is the Spirit Nova, with Corpse Splitter. And as we saw, the last one that we have is right at the bottom here, Guard of the Loom. So this is where Bone Spirits now conjures a Wraith that follows you and continuously hurls soulfire at nearby enemies. Now I know this is definitely going to trigger it. This is a very, very fast Bone Spirit essence, and it's a really fun one to use as well. So watch this. If you just go around, if you haven't seen this, he fires these like basketball type things, and yeah, it silences the enemy just because of how fast this Bone Spirit essence is. You can see how quickly it fires those at the enemy. So this is an interesting one. So yeah, this one does have potential because, you know, you could be attacking your enemy and then it's going to deal that silence with the Bone Spirits whilst you're running around the enemy and still hitting them as well. Now let's see what happens when I actually stand here. I think it'd be this one or the Drifter's Fair one that I'd probably end up pairing with Corpse Splitter. So what happens if I stand here? So can't see a silence there. Let me try that one more time. See, what's happening is it's kind of getting confused about the boss training dummy behind me and the one in front of me, which means it's not doing enough attacks on the same enemy to actually trigger the silence, I think. Now let's go back to Drifter's Fair and take a look. Okay, let me use Drifter's Fair over here. So yeah, I think Drifter's Fair is much better. It sort of directly goes towards the enemy, and the wandering wraiths, they just sort of spin around and circle around your enemy. And even if you just do one, let's have a look. Does that trigger the silence? Yeah, even just the one skull triggers the silence on the enemy. So you can kind of stay back, fire these, let them do their thing, attack the enemy, and you're also going to get them silenced as well. It's a really interesting skill, and I'm very tempted to actually play around with this one in Battleground. Now, like the other one I was saying is this Kepileki's Tribute, which I'm going to have a look at separately. Let's try again here. So yeah, that one's not bad. You can actually use that from quite a far distance. That's going to trigger burning and silence. The burning obviously from my other skills that I've got. So Drifter's Fair, Kepileki's Tribute, or you've got the one right at the bottom, Guard of Loom. They're quite fun ones to use, and the other ones maybe hit and miss. So that's how you can sort of pair together Corpse Splitter with the other Bone Spirit essences. Now, the other thing you can do is if you are using a Bone Spirit build, so you've got Corpse Splitter in the weapon slot, you've got Drifter's Fair or any of the other ones we've discussed which you want to pair together with Corpse Splitter to actually trigger the silence. And then if you have a look at the chest, you can even have another Bone Spirit essence on the chest. So this one I've got Bone Spirit damage, it's increased by 66.5% to feared enemies. So this just means you need to have another skill that fears enemies, like Command Skeletons that can fear enemies, or you can have Wraith form, but then that's kind of been nerfed. You can sort of time Banshee properly. So there are a couple of other Bone Spirit essences which you can pick in your chest piece that work together nicely with Corpse Splitter on your weapon and any other Bone Spirit essence which you have on your shield. For example, if we scroll down here, there's one called Tempered Urn, this one here. Bone Spirit damage deals 38% increased damage to burning enemies, and then you get an additional 10% damage as well on top of that. Now, if you've got an Angerment set piece, you could do burning damage and attach that burning damage, that ignite status on your enemy. If you've got Rolling Consequence, that's got burning. Starfire Shard, that's got burning. If you have like a burning golem as well. So when you do use Bone Spirits, you'll be able to deal additional damage to burning enemies, and you'll also be silencing enemies from a distance, and also you'll be dealing damage. So look at all of this burning damage. I'm getting increased damage from that burn, and the enemy is silenced as well. So if we have a double check on the Bone Spirits, here you've got Wandering Wraith, you've got the Corpse Splitter essence, and then we've got the one we just picked, Tempered Urn. So you can see how all of those work together nicely in those three essence slots. And the other one worth looking at is one called Skin to Bones, if I remember correctly. I think it's further down here, this one here. Bone Spirit's damage to the same enemy increases by 11.4% with each hit, up to a maximum of 34.2%. And you get an additional 10% damage as well. So this is quite nice because, you know, even something like Drifter's Fair, it's going to keep hitting that same enemy until it disappears. Each time it hits that enemy, you're just going to get an additional 11.4% damage, and that's going to keep going up until you get a maximum of 34.2%. So this also pairs together with Corpse Splitter and something like Drifter's Fair as well. So just keep that in mind. So that kind of shows you if you have a Bone Spirit build, and if you did want to use Corpse Splitter in PvP to silence your enemies, you know, just to be wary of what type of other Bone Spirit essences you pick on the shield slot. Obviously pick something which you can use from further away. You don't want too much room for error. So that's why I like Wandering Wraith for this one. And then remember, you can have your chest piece also paired together something with these two. So you can have three nice Bone Spirit essences working together, leaving your other slots for some of your other skills. So for example, I've just switched to another build where I've still got Bone Spirits that I used in PvP a while ago. What I can do is maybe remove this Bone Spirits, has a 20% chance to inflict fear on enemies, and I put in Corpse Splitter in that slot instead. And then I keep Drifter's Fair up here, and then instead of maybe feared enemies, maybe I don't want to do as much fear now, especially that proximal fear has been nerfed. I could change this to something like the burning enemies one, so maybe I can do Tempered Urn. So in this particular build, I've got Wraith form for survivability, and you can fear the enemies if you time it properly, and it does damage. I've got Skeletal Mages, I've got Command Skeletons, and I've got Bone Spirits as well. For example, if I have a look at the essences, for the helm, I've got Spectral Warriors, so I've got untargetable skeletons that I fire at the enemies and it fears them and does damage. For the chest piece, I've got Tempered Urn, so this is my Bone Spirits one. deals 38% increased damage to burning enemies, and I've got Angment set, I've got Rolling Consequence, I've got Starfire Shard which helps towards that, and then I've got Festering Wounds where my skeletal mages do increased damage for each harmful effect on the enemy, like the burn. I've got Proximal Fear. This is my survivability skill that I use with Wraith form just to get out of the way, getting in and out. But if I time this properly, I can also fear the enemies as well and do damage. For the weapon, when I fire the command skeletons to enemies, the damage is going to increase. And I've got the Corpse Splitter essence, which we just talked about in the weapon slot here. So now I'm going to silence the enemies from a distance as well as doing fear, as well as doing burning damage. I've got the Spectral Mages. They're untargetable, and they're just going to help me out beside me and just firing at the enemies. Obviously this can be swapped out with anything else that you want instead. And then I've got Drifter's Fair, where Bone Spirits fires at Wandering Skulls. So I can sort of stay back, have my mages up, I can fear the enemy, I can stand back and do Bone Spirits, and then I'm going to have Silence, I've got Burning, I've got Chilled, I've got Fear, continuous damage, and then I've not even had a chance to use my primary attacks, and then you can even sort of go in and fear the training dummy or enemy. Of course you got fear as well. So that's kind of how you can use a build like this, where you've got Bone Spirits working together with your summons and with sort of fire and fear and silence and everything like that. So it sort of works together quite nicely there. And that's pretty much it for this video. Just a quick overview of Corpse Splitter, the Bone Spirit essence for Necromancer. Once again, when Bone Spirits damages the same target 3 times within 2 seconds, it silences them, preventing the use of skills for 2.9 seconds. And you can't silence the same target more often than once every 6 seconds. You do get an increased damage with Bone Spirits as well. So like I said, this is a really nice one that you want to use in PvP. It might be quite useful in Vault as well. When you're with your party, you could support your party member as a Necromancer by silencing an enemy when you deal that damage 3 times within the 2 seconds, and then that might stop that person from doing stuff whilst the other team members help take them down, and then you can help out as well. Obviously you need to make sure that you do have a Bone Spirit essence and skill which is able to do the 3 attacks within the 2 seconds, but when that does happen, that silence for 2.9 seconds can be deadly, because it means that they'll be vulnerable for that time. For that reason, I'll probably give this one a thumbs up, because it's just a really deadly one to silence your enemies in PvP, leaving them quite vulnerable. And it's nice that this actually pairs together with things like Drifter's Fair and a couple of the other ones which we looked at, and it also pairs together with something that you have in your chest slot for Bone Spirits, for example, increased damage to burning enemies, or the continuous damage one as well. It pairs together nicely. It's nice that they've given more of a reason to take Bone Spirits into PvP. It's one that I used to use quite a lot in PvP as well. I quite like Bone Spirits because, especially with Drifter's Fair, like I said, you can stand back, cast it, you can carry on doing your own thing, and then you've got this really annoying giant Wraith skull that's like following the enemy, and they, if that's around you, you just want to get out the way. So I've seen a lot of people where I've cast Bone Spirits on them, and you can see that skull's just annoying them, and they're basically just trying to shake it off and just trying to move out the way until it goes away. It is very distracting having those 2 giant skulls around you. So now not only are the skulls going to be taking damage, it's also going to silence you as well, so it makes it even more annoying. So really fun one to use against players as a Necromancer. So that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know if you have ended up trying out Corpse Splitter for the Necromancer in PvP, and if you get on well with it, if you've noticed that silence actually doing a good job. But yeah, I might try this one out. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.